My job was not to show everybody how good I was. My job
Mm.
was to, play the parts that were on the record and play and color the music.
That's Rich Mangicaro, and it may be the most important lesson in this entire conversation. Over a career that has taken him from the Drifters to Glenn Frey and Joe Walsh, plus decades behind the scenes as a performer, composer, producer, and artist relations executive, Rich has discovered that the greatest musicians aren't the ones who play the most notes, they're the ones who listen. This is a conversation about rhythm, creativity, service, and why the best music begins with paying attention. We'll kick things off with The Way It Was, the final track from Rich's most recent album entitled A Dream I Had. first of all, I want to say thanks a million for joining today,
Yeah.
Rich. It's really wonderful to have you. I've done some show prep research. Get a little background on you. I think you've had an amazing career. I can't wait to talk about it. So I really appreciate you being here.
Thanks for
Um,
having me.
yeah, of course. Jeff Tripoli really can't say enough good things about you. I had a great conversation with him. So continuing the friendly conversation kind of thing. So that'll
It
be
was a nice
excellent.
interview. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Oh, thanks. Jeff's all right. He's an interesting cat. I like him.
Yeah, it's funny how I know that guy. I didn't know him when I lived back there. I'm from there, and he's much younger than I am. And
Mm.
I met him out, from out here through mutual friends of mine that are drummers out here that told me about him. They said, "You got to meet him." And I said, "Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know about him, but very creative cat."
He really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
The wasabi can
Yeah.
was wasabi string board that he built. I think that's the sound on
Yeah.
that thing just knocks me out. I love it.
I know. It's fun. It's fun creating all that stuff. We never grow up as a percussionist.
That's probably a good thing for the rest of us, I think.
Yeah.
Tell me, Rich, from Syracuse, how did you get started in drumming?
Well, it's pretty typical of people around my age group because actually, my inspiration really originally was two things: the Lucy Show and
Mm.
the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. So both of those things, I used to watch the Lucy Show with my folks, and the Cuban ensemble with the drums and all the Afro-Cuban stuff turned me on. And then I saw Ringo on Ed Sullivan. That was it. In '64, whenever that was. But that was it. That's when I just decided, okay, that's what I want to do. So I started way back then. I started, like 7 years old or 6 years old, something like that.
First instrument, what started it for you?
Well, I think I think my mom and dad got me a set of like toy bongos, but
Mm.
it was school, junior high school, grade school music programs. That's how it started,
Mm.
you know. So
You pester your old man for a
yeah.
drum kit?
Well, my father was a big influence on me too. My father was a fine artist. He was a painter
Ah,
and
right.
award-winning painter in my town. Did art shows all the time. And when I was growing up, he was always listening to jazz. So he had an art studio downstairs in the basement, and he was playing Brubeck or Miles Davis or whoever he
Mm.
was playing when he was working, and I was constantly listening to that. So when I was, a kid, they got me my first drum kit when I was very young. So then that's when my first influence was probably, musically from, the Beatles, and also from listening to jazz music and Afro-Cuban music.
It seems to me that still sort of informs your sound. How has all of that come forward for you into what you're doing currently?
Well, I think, uh, mainly it was drum kit, and then in the different school bands and stuff until I went through college.
Mm.
But I was playing drum kit mostly in my younger days in bands and stuff like that. In college, I started learning more of the all around percussion. I studied classical percussion. Um, I started at a community college, and then I went to Syracuse University. And the guy who taught me at Syracuse was a big influence on me. Uh, he was Hispanic, and he was able to, turn me on to how to properly play congas and
Mm.
hand drums. And then I didn't finish my schooling at SU. I got a job going on the road playing music. So I kind of decided to leave college, and then I went back years later, in like the mid '80s, and finished my music degree at a school in Potsdam, New York, called the Crane School of Music.
Mm.
And my teacher there was this guy named Jim Peterzak, who was also a big influence on me. And he worked with me a lot on all kinds of like mallet keyboard stuff and classical percussion. And that's where I got my degree in music performance. And then I moved out here after that. So
When you were gigging, just out of when you left college, what kind of work were you doing? Who were you gigging with?
mostly
What kind of work?
cover
Yeah.
stuff, like everybody does, cover top
Yeah.
40. I
Yeah.
got into a band actually that did a bunch of like, for a bunch of years, I was traveling doing like, um, hotel lounges, but playing, cover music all over the Northeast.
Do you remember your first show in front of people? Are you a guy that gets stage fright? Is it just like whatever I'm going to play? This is what I love to do. How's it worked for you?
No, I was never one to really get stage fright, but my first live in front of people performance was in high school when I was
Mm.
in this band. It was around the same time that Happy Days aired on TV, and I put a band together with friends called Big Rocky and the Rollers, and we were kind of like Sha Na Na. So we did oldies, and we ended up, like playing high school dances, and that
Yeah.
was kind of like the first performances. But we dressed up and we did the whole Sha Na Na thing, which
You know,
was a lot
Sean
of
and I was
fun.
one of my favorites. We had vinyl back in when
Uh
I was a
huh.
kid. My
Yeah.
parents had a very eclectic record collection. Sean and I was one of a live performance at, I think, Cornell University. And
Yeah.
they're just, they are who they are. But I love that stuff. Anyway, it's cool to know that you were doing that kind of thing and with the get up, right? That's fun.
Well, that was interesting time because I was pretty young at the time, but ended up lasting for a little while into my early college, my first year of college, and one of the things that came across us was we were playing a bunch of shows in clubs at that time too around upstate New York, and we had this opportunity to open for the Drifters,
Oh, wow.
and they heard me and they hired me to play a bunch of shows with them. So that was my first, like, if you want to call it a big gig. I was very young. I was like 18 or something, but I was playing with two of the original members of the Drifters at that time, and I was the only white guy in that, and they had the original guitar player. That was a good learning thing for me.
I bet. That seems like 18. It's the Drifters. That had to feel like I've kind of hit some kind of big time here. How do you remember what was going through your head when you got that invite?
I was pretty nervous, but at the same time, it was just not that many, like two or three local
Mm,
things around upstate New York and some clubs. And, um, I already kind of knew their music because we were kind of playing that stuff.
mm,
So, it was it was a good schooling for me.
yeah.
So
Tell me what you learned, Rich. How did you learn from those guys?
I think mainly it was more about, groove, like playing that kind of music. It was kind of like borderline R&B, borderline pop music, and learning how to kind of play with guys like that have been doing it for so long. So
Mm,
they kind of feel the music a little differently than somebody who's younger, a little bit more laid back. And that was a good lesson for me,
mm,
not to be, because I was playing a lot of jazz fusion and pop and progressive rock at that time too, because I
mm.
was influenced by bands like Yes and Genesis and stuff like that. So a little bit more on the progressive side, ELP, but I also loved R&B a lot. And I saw actually one of the big influences on me was when I think I was it was 1969. I saw Steppenwolf as a headliner, and Sly and the Family Stone opened, and they were kind of unknown at that point. I think their first hit was just out. I think Dance to the Music just came out,
Mm.
and and I was much more into Sly and the Family Stone than I was Steppenwolf after that show. After that show, it changed me, and I really kind of dug into more R&B music.
I mean, what
That's
a performance, right? Those guys were something.
oh yeah, oh man, they were
Yeah,
so ahead of their time,
totally. Yeah.
so ahead of their time. And matter of fact, I can tell you about this a little later, but full circle of my life and my weird career, I ended up years later befriending the original drummer for Sly, and he's a good friend of mine now. And he came to one of my shows when I was on the road with Joe Walsh. So it was very much full circle where all of a sudden he's sitting behind me, and I was able to tell him my story about, man, I saw you when I was 11, or, it's pretty great.
How about that? That's good. That's like very small world kind of
Unbelievable.
musician thing.
Unbelievable.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. As I was looking for your discography, especially, but also other stuff on your website, I noticed one of the uh, um, posts that were there. You had a colleague talking about how he loves your percussion theme on your third album and how it tells such a great musical story. And I think that's really evocative. For me, a lot of people that I know who are into music are into melody or lyrics.
and rhythm just seems to kind of be there, and they don't really think about it. So this is one of the things that talking with Jeff and now with you, and I've Kalani Das has agreed to
Oh
come on
yeah,
the show. So
great. He's a
and
good.
Butch Norton, right? So I'm learning so much from guys who who play drums and do percussion. This is an amazing opportunity for me to sort of help other people who might not understand what's rhythm, what's tempo, why does it all
Uh-huh.
matter, and how do you tell a story with drums. So that's a long sort of intro to get to the point of asking the question, how do you tell a story through through drumming, through percussion?
Wh- You know, I mean, if you're referring to my original music, does it come? It doesn't always come from drums and percussion first. A lot of times it
Mm,
comes from a melody in
mm,
my head, and I'll start on piano. More specifically on that third album than the first two records. I was really more keyed into melodic sense and
mm,
starting something melodic and then building on it. So on the third record, you could definitely hear that because it's a very melodic album, more thematic than the first two. The first two records are more all over the place genre wise,
mm,
whereas the third record has more continuity and more theme to it, I think. And I think that's just because I got better, you know.
mm,
This is my first record I released in 2018, and prior to that, I had never done this before. I was always a sideman, you know, playing with other people, and I had a lot of melodies in my head, and I played a lot of piano on my own. Never, the piano's my writing instrument. It's not really my performing instrument,
I see.
and keyboards, but I use it for creating. And I think in 2016, after Glenn Frey passed away, and I stopped traveling on the road, I kind of started thinking along the lines of I want to do my own records, you know, and I
Mm,
think that's where that all started from. But a lot of my stuff comes from I had an idea in my head melodically, and I'll play a piano part, and then it'll build into some sort of a piece of music, and then I'll build on it with percussion and drums. Sometimes a song will start out with something from drums, like some sort of a groove or a pattern,
mm,
and then I'll think of stuff to play over it. There's a few songs on my first album that started like that, but I think most of the third album started with me playing piano improv. A lot of it's improvisation that builds into a song too, and then I layer stuff.
mm.
So
Like on that third album, you have Birdsong
yeah,
interspersed on a couple of tunes, and I think that really accentuates the sound and the like. It may for me, it feels like a very introspective album. It takes me inside
it was that.
and gets
I
me.
wrote that. I wrote that during COVID by myself a lot. You
Mm,
know, late at night, my wife went to bed, and I just started playing keyboards and piano and
mm,
coming up with ideas. It was as you know, it was such an emotional time, you know. So some of the titles on the album you can see. Actually, the second album too. The second and third album were both created during the COVID era, and it was like
mm.
there's a lot of songs that reflect, what we were feeling and going through. Hope we never go through that again. But it was a good
Totally,
creative time.
it was oddly right. It's sort of oxymoron, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Uh, What else changed for you um, in terms of the pandemic? How does that affected your career during those years?
Interestingly, I was not playing live for a long time. It
Mm,
just dried up for me. And just in the past 2 years, it's come back, and I'm busy again. But it was pretty quiet for a long time.
mm,
You know, there was a few things that I would take, and early in the pandemic, I got some offers that just turned down because I didn't want to go on an airplane. I didn't want to be around.
mm,
There were certain people in certain bands that didn't believe in vaccinations and stuff like that, and I didn't want to be around those people because I
mhm.
didn't want to bring any sickness home to my family. So I didn't take those jobs unless everybody was on board with being really careful. But as as the whole situation progressed and got better and better, and I started getting a few more calls, and now it's back to kind of where it was before. Although I'm not really on the road, I'm doing mostly local live stuff and recording
Mm.
now. I'm not doing too many road things anymore. It's mostly in town.
Being on the road seems like a hard life in its way. Is it better not to be on the road to be playing local?
I don't know if it's better. I mean, if it depends on the level. I mean, I was very
Mm.
fortunate to play at the level that I was playing, and when you're playing with those types of artists, you're treated really well, and you travel well, and it's beautiful, and you get spoiled. At my age now, I don't really want to just hop in a van and guerrilla tour. You know, I don't
Yeah.
think that's in my cards anymore. And even flying now is kind of a drag unless you're, able to fly comfortably. And I did get spoiled, honestly. Um, but yeah, I mean, the last thing that I got that was, at that level, I auditioned for Chris Isaac a few years ago, and they flew me out to Nashville, and we played together for a few hours, and it went great. And that I thought was going to come my way, and then they decided at the end of that whole process that they weren't going to add percussion to it, so I didn't do it. But that was an interesting experience. Really nice guy, great band. It was really fun. It was a nice experience.
Yeah. And being in Nashville, that's just sort of like going home, isn't it? To be in Music City.
It's a great town. I spent a lot of time there actually because, along with being a musician, you've probably seen my resume that I do artist relations for various percussion brands. And at the time I was going to Nashville every year for this one brand that I was working with. I don't work for them now, but so that brought me there every year, which was great. It was always really fun, and I have played there only a couple of times in my career. I haven't played Nashville very often, but yeah, it's a cool town.
Tell me about artist relations, Rich. This is a thing that I think most of the people who tune into this podcast probably don't know much about it. What does it mean? What do you do as an artist relations guy?
The best way that I can describe this is imagine the guy who works for Nike, and he's between Nike and Michael Jordan. He's the guy that handles Michael Jordan account, right? So he makes sure that Michael Jordan gets his instrument, his shoes or his clothing. And he also organizes and works on marketing and promotions with Michael's name and likeness. That's what I do for, same thing. I do the same thing, except for much smaller budgets than the sports industry. But that's what I do for, the percussion industry. So I've been doing this. I did it for Paiste Cymbals, which is a Swiss company, for 20 years. And then, I took some time off, and then I started working for the company that I'm working for now, which is a percussion brand called Gone Bops, which is one of the, if not the oldest Afro-Cuban percussion brands in the United States. So that's who I've been working with for now for the past 15 years. And basically, any of the signed endorsees, like if you see like Jeff, like a guitar player like Eric Clapton, right, or whoever has an endorsement relationship with Fender, let's say. The same thing in our industry. So signed endorsees will have a relationship with us. We provide instruments to them either at a discount or free, depending on their notoriety and their influence. And they go through me to get their instruments. And I work on advertising, and I host their podcast. I created and host a podcast called the Percussion Loft. So I've got about 20 episodes of different percussionists that we interview. So I do that as well. I edit all their videos, and I create videos and edit videos for them for product stuff and that kind of thing.
Interesting.
But it's mainly making sure they get what they need when they need it, give them advice on the products. And I also, I'm very heavily involved with designing instruments and coming up with ideas and seeing that to fruition too.
So that's interesting, Rich. How does it happen that new instruments come out of a shop like that? What's the process for innovation?
It depends on what we have and don't have. Like it might be necessity. Or it might be something that we already have that we want to make a different version of, something like that. We don't have a very big offering of instruments with this company, Gone Bops. It's small and mighty and very authentic. And at this point, there's only a few things that's made in North America. So we have some drums that come out of Peru that we design and then they make in Peru. And then a bunch of our drums come out of Thailand. There's an amazing factory in Thailand that makes very authentic Afro-Cuban instruments. and then Taiwan as well for a lot of our what we call our hardware, which is all our metallic stands and that kind of stuff, and bells and tambourines. That comes from Taiwan. So that part of my job is meeting with them on a regular basis to discuss design concepts and then get feedback from the artists that we have. We have like a few artists that are kind of like an advisory board that give us feedback on something we're working on. And then I help translate their feedback, their needs to the manufacturers, and then we come up with an idea, and then they send us samples, and it's a lot of back and forth kind of thing.
It sounds like a lot of relationship work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Tell me, Rich, what is the average, what if you could speak to people who are not sort of in the drumming world, they're not paying attention to what drummers do specifically, how should they listen? What is it that they don't understand about what drummers bring and percussionists bring to the music that they enjoy?
Times now are quite different than they were when I was starting out, because now we have a YouTube generation. We have, basically everybody's online learning things or picking up something that inspires them and trying to do it. We didn't have that. So we were more one-on-one with teachers and friends and spending a lot of in-person time with people and listening to music, listening to records, listening to recordings and trying to learn from that, right? I think a lot of stuff that young players listen to or watch now is all basically off of YouTube. I mean, the industry of buying music is, as you know, it's quite nil. I mean,
it collapsed.
We have a Spotify mentality where most of the young people I talk to do not even own a CD player, record player, nothing. They listen to their music on a computer with a space bar, and a lot of them don't even have headphones. It's very sad to me. It's a very difficult thing for us creative artists because I still print CDs. I know guys that make albums too, and I still have an album collection, LPs, but I'm old school. I don't feel like a project is finished until it's physical in my hand with a CD in my hand, and some people still buy CDs and you give them out at shows and stuff like that. A lot of times they'll buy the CD and then they'll listen to it online anyway, because they don't have a CD player, and the auto industry doesn't have CD players in the cars. It's actually pretty awful for us as creative artists that you can't buy music. People don't think about buying music. You know what I mean? They think about obtaining music through streaming services. They pay a monthly fee and they get anything they want. And I get it. It's great. I still do it too. I don't have anything on Spotify. I removed all my music from Spotify. I don't want to support that company, but for my own personal reasons. But I still have my music on YouTube Music and Apple and all the other streaming services. But I think that it's kind of a disservice to what we do as composers and musicians that people aren't hearing the music the way it's supposed to be heard, and they're not supporting us by buying our music. Because if you think about how much people spend for a streaming service, they're spending $10 a month or whatever, and they get whatever they want. And how that trickles down to us who create the music is virtually not even pennies. It's terrible. So
even artists who have hundreds of thousands or even millions of streams on Spotify earn those same pennies.
Right. You have to get millions and millions of streams on any of those services in order to see anything somewhat reasonable. And even when I say somewhat reasonable, if you're lucky, if you can get a few thousand or $3,000 or $10,000, if you're getting millions and millions of streams, and those of us that are independent artists are never going to see that. So, yeah.
Is there I've talked with a number of folks who have the same experience, right? I mean, almost everybody I've had on the podcast so far have been in this space of the streaming thing just doesn't work for any of us. It's a whole lot of folks who are having the same experience.
Right.
And I wonder if it feels to me like there's a pushback to Spotify, right? You're pulling it off. Other people I know are pulling it off, pulling your music off of that service.
Yeah.
What's so there's two questions I think that I want to ask you. One is, what's the future of streaming look like? That's likely not to go away. So what does that look like, do you think? And what does the future of physical products look like for music?
I wish I could answer that. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't think streaming is going away. I think it's something that has become way too convenient and easy to be eliminated. It's not going to, but I think that there's a few companies that have done a big disservice by their decision politically. And a lot of us that are in the creative fields may lean a little bit more left, if you will. And some of these big tech companies have kind of dove into the whole political arena on the right side, and that has caused a lot of us to say, I don't want to support that anymore. So, I mean, Spotify is one of those, and other companies, I think that we'll see a turnaround, in a few years probably. And, the tech companies are always going to do what's best for their shareholders. So, that's just a reality, I mean, right now that could be good for their shareholders the way things are, but it could change, but it caused a lot of us specifically to pull off of Spotify. And Apple's not that much better, but it's almost a necessity for us to have music somewhere streaming because it's kind of our radio now, where stuff is going to get heard, But also because my partner and I, Jonathan Clark is my writing partner, composing and producing and engineering partner who was in Glenn Frey's band with me for 15 years, an extremely talented guy here in Los Angeles. He's now the bass player for Dwight Yoakam. He's been with Dwight for quite a while, but he and I have created a lot of things together and produced together a lot. We're working on a new project together right now. And Jonathan and I have written a bunch of songs for television and film and commercial stuff. So we've got about 40 tracks being distributed around the world right now for small little TV placement and commercial placement stuff. So we see a little bit of money coming in that through ASCAP and BMI or whoever he's with. I can't remember, but I'm with ASCAP. So that's really nice to see the mailbox money coming in when I'm not doing anything. And I've put a lot of work into that, creating these 40 songs. And that has drawn attention to my original music as well. So I've seen a little bit of money coming in through that kind of stuff as well. So I'm glad I did that. But there's that kind of stuff for television and commercial and all that is all short burst pieces, like little 2-minute cues that are specific for the needs of that world, That's helped draw attention to my original records, I think, a little bit.
The television aspect is called underscore music. Is that right?
Yeah, underscore, right.
And how does that work? Are you commissioned for that? Do they say this is the layout of what we're trying to get to, and you just produce something and there's back and forth? How do you actually produce that kind of music?
Yeah, they came to us. There's one company that we get distributed by, and they came to us and said, we need 10 songs in a like action sports genre. And then we did that. And then he said, we need 10 songs more orchestral pop. Okay. So we did that. We need 10 songs for crime drama, a thriller. So we did that. And then we did, another one that was more, another more pop thing, so there specifics that they wanted, and they gave us some examples of music that they wanted. And then we wrote with that in mind. So.
That's pretty interesting.
It's cool. We don't get paid up front. That's the thing. It's a lot of spec. Yeah. So it's a lot of work for no money, and you get paid in the back end, and then the agreement is that if it gets placed somewhere, then you're going to see, some shares from that, but it's not a lot of money. It's the only way to really do well with that if we were doing hundreds and hundreds of tracks, but both myself and Jonathan don't have the time to just take and just do that because we're doing other things.
Right.
Since you're not getting paid up front, you gotta just hope you get, and it takes a couple of years. I mean, it took, by the time we got everything placed and got it out there, it's been a couple of years until we started seeing money come in, but it can come in from anywhere. I mean, we got placements all over in different countries all over the world, in there, just small little bits and pieces here that get pieced together, and then you get some kind of money. But it's fun to look at your statement. You see Belgium, Germany,
Right.
wherever, and it's at a TV show in Portugal, or that's fun.
Are you guys do all the composing and all the instruments yourselves? Do you play it yourselves, or do you commission somebody to play it for you? How do you?
No, we did everything. So I did keyboards, drums, percussion, and Jonathan played all the guitars and keyboards and did it all ourselves. Engineered, produced it. Yeah, it's a good duo. He's a secret weapon in Los Angeles. This guy. Yeah, he'd be an interesting interview for you. He's got a very interesting career.
But you've had similarly a hell of a career, right? So Glenn Frey, the Tubes, Venice, Joe Walsh, I think. You've played with a bunch of the bigs. Jeff Porcaro, and your mentor was his dad, Joe, right? So
right, that's right.
You've been all around all kinds of interesting people. Let's talk a little bit about your career. How has working in these areas, since from the Drifters to, Glenn Frey, for instance, how have they all helped you develop as a musician?
I think with any situation like that, if you're playing with people that are better than you, you're going to improve. And Glenn, Glenn was the first real big gig for me. I was playing with this great band you mentioned called Venice. They're a fantastic band from Los Angeles that I've been kind of on and off playing with them, still do, for almost 30 years now. These guys are some of the best singer-songwriters I've ever heard, and David Crosby used to quote them as his favorite vocalists in America, and used to use them on his records. And we played a bunch of gigs with David as his band too. So he and Jackson Browne and a bunch of other artists had used Venice. They're great. And if you remember the Lennon sisters from the Lawrence Welk show, this is their family. So this is the Lennon family. That everybody in this family are amazing singers and musicians. In one side of the family, there's 13 brothers and sisters. On the other side of it's 11 brothers and sisters. And that's what Venice is. Venice started, 30-something years ago, more than that probably. And I was turned on to them initially by a very, very close friend of mine who is the head designer and vice president of DW Drums. This guy's name is John Good. He was a big influence on my career. And John and I, when I was working at Peisty and John was running DW, basically, we had met and done different events together. And one night after an event, he said, "What are you doing tonight?" And I said, "I don't know." He goes, "You want to go see my favorite band?" And he took me to see Venice the first time. And it was completely blew my mind how great they were. And the original drummer for Venice, his name is Scott Crego, and he's now the drummer for the Eagles. And he's been the drummer for the Eagles for 35 years, something like that. So I met Scott. I signed him to his Peisty endorsement, and we became friends. And then jump ahead many years later, I ended up getting into the band Venice and playing percussion for them, basically through Scott and also the drummer Matt Logg. This is a long story, but I'll get to it. Matt Logg replaced Scott. When Scott went to Eagles, Matt Logg became their drummer. Matt and I played together a lot with Venice and also did some touring in Europe together. And long story short, Matt is now the drummer for AC/DC.
No kidding.
So that's who's playing with AC/DC now. But Venice was instrumental for me in meeting all these great artists that I've played with. And, through Scott Crego is how Glenn Frey came, because Scott and I were doing an original band in Los Angeles and we were doing on this project, and Glenn Frey had a percussionist that left and said, "I want somebody and I don't want to do auditions, recommend somebody." So Scott recommended me. So that's how that happened. And it was in 1998, I think.
That's something impressive to get in there with no auditions. How was it when you, like, the first time you played? What was going through your head?
There, I was nervous. I was nervous. Of course I was nervous. I had no idea what I was getting into, but they had a rehearsal studio up in North Hollywood. And actually that was with Joe Walsh, because we were doing two double duo shows with them for a lot of big corporate events. So that's what we were rehearsing for. So Glenn would do a song of his, then Joe would do a song, and Glenn and Joe. And that was the first that was the first rendition of that band, was that band. And I got into it, and that's shortly after Jonathan got into it too. And my first gig with them was in a hotel in Orlando for some big corporate event, and then just went on from there for 15 years. So, and ended up singing background vocals with him as well. So, percussion and background vocals. But the first couple of gigs, they went well, and I was really nervous. And I remember we were in Minneapolis, playing a theater in Minneapolis, and Glenn goes, "Have Rich do a shot of tequila before the show. Have him loosen up a little." Because I was very, very, reserved and just playing the parts. And, he goes, and anyway, but it worked out great. I was very, very blessed, really.
Did that break a little bit of the ice? Did you loosen up after that, Rich?
Yeah. I mean, Glenn was a kidder. He was a very funny guy. Yeah. And he wanted everybody to have some fun up there, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Yeah. And, I was never approached that gig as, my job was not to show everybody how good I was. My job was to, play the parts that were on the record, and play and color the music, and play with Scott, and make it an ensemble, right? He's playing what he plays on drum kit. I have to play what fits within him and what the music calls for. I was never like sitting there trying to be Mr. Conga player, Mr. Chops, it was all about musicality. It was all about playing what's appropriate, and I lasted longer than the other percussionists that he had because of that, because I think I approached it more from a classical sense too. I think because I was thinking more along the lines of orchestration and how to play the right part for the music, and what choices I would make picking up an instrument, and how it would fit, not just with what Scott was playing, but what Glenn was singing, what frequency the guitar player was playing. So if he's in a certain frequency, I'm not going to pick up an instrument that's in that same frequency. I was trying to make it so that it was an ensemble throughout the whole band. That's the way I approached it.
When you got the invite to, just before you even started, how do you prepare for something like that? Like, there's no audition, there's a catalog of music that you're going to have to know. What's your process for?
Oh, I already knew the Eagles catalog. I grew up on it. I knew it very well. So it wasn't really that much I got a board tape from one of their concerts, and I listened to the board tape, and I did my setup. And, at that time I had a big setup. When I was playing with those guys, I had a very big setup, as opposed to like, it depends on what I'm playing, because my setup changes all the time depending on the gig. But I knew their music fairly well already. With that one, I used 3 congas, djembe, bongos, timbales, a trap table with all the toys, and then some cymbals. Yeah, smaller shows might be just a couple of congas and some bongos and toys, or, stuff I'm doing in town right now is a whole different ball of wax. I'm playing like a little quartet unplugged stuff where I'm playing, a hybrid of drums and percussion together. And this is something that I love to do. So now my current setup is very weird setup where I've got 2 cajones. I've got an old vintage suitcase as a bass drum, a small 10-inch snare drum, some hi-hats, a tambourine in my left foot.
A suitcase for your bass drum. Tell me about this.
Yeah, I found this it's not my original idea. Drummers have been doing this forever, but I've always loved the sound of that. And it's got a very old school 1970s thump. So it's very cool for playing unplugged, smaller situations. Right. It's all about the sonic blending of everything that's going on in a small situation where people are playing acoustic guitars and stuff. So that's why I chose it. So, and playing mostly without sticks, mostly with brushes and rods and, alternative implements, not necessarily even needing drumsticks, for example, because everything is kind of keyed down and we're singing and playing and acoustic. It's fun.
Interesting.
Yeah,
where does the drummer's sound come from? Is it attitude? Is it the drum itself? Is it the way you hit it? Where does the sound come from? The distinct sound, your sound.
All of the above. Yeah, all of that. I've noticed, and you probably have too, when you see someone's personality as a musician, and then you watch them, their personality may come through as a player. If they're really an aggressive player, an aggressive person, or they're really mellow, or, I think that has a part of it, but some of my favorite musicians, I can see that immediately on how their instrument is, how their instrument is played, But I think it's all about knowing how to use an instrument, how to play it, so that the sound is appropriate, and also that what the music calls for. And it's really all about, for me, it's all about feel. It's all about, what makes the music feel good. You know what I mean? As a drummer, our job is to make people dance. It's our job to make sure that the music has that good feel, that good movement. It's not about being the flashy drummer. For me, I appreciate flashy drummers, but it's about making the music feel good and play what the music calls for. Like, especially when you're playing with singers, because I've done a lot of work with great singers. What does that singer want to feel behind them, right? So that's important.
Is that they're going to tell you what they want, or is it more sort of embodied communication that you figure out what they're looking for?
They'll tell you if you're not doing the right thing, or if you're overplaying, or if it's too loud, or you have to be very sensitive about dynamics, and, but it's about, doing your homework and listening to the music and really kind of getting a sense of, what that calls for. I mean, some of my favorite players are all the drummers that play what the music calls for and play it beautifully, like Steve Gadd or Jeff Porcaro or Russ Kunkel or James Gadson, who we just lost, actually, unfortunately. He's a dear friend of mine, but he played on countless R&B hits. When you listen to these kind of guys, you're hearing the music is better because of how they played it,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So I asked you a little bit ago what you learned from, the folks that you've played with, but this might be a little harder to answer, Rich, but what do you think they've learned from you?
That's hard to answer a question like that. What someone like that would, I don't know if it's a fact they're learning anything from us as sidemen, other than if they're happy, then they know that you're doing their music a service, and you're playing what's appropriate for their music and making it feel good. And if they're smiling and you have that job and you keep that job, then you're doing your job, and you're good, and you're a good hang. That's another thing, it's, you really, you're on stage for 2.5 hours or something like that, in a day. And the rest of that day you're traveling and you're hanging and you got to be professional. You have to be on time, and you got to be a good person. You got to be a nice, respectable person. That's huge in our industry, or you won't last.
So part of what I think I'm taking away from this is, as you help these artists realize their vision, you're supporting, but you're also the support that you offer to them. And I think the respectability thing you're getting at really requires that you listen. So listening seems to be the key, quality that you bring to these relationships.
Yeah, not just listening to music, but listening to them as a person, and getting a sense of, boundaries when you're traveling, and when to say something, when to not say something, when to shut up, when to, all of that. When to just, yeah, I mean, conversation, listening. Yes.
Yeah.
Music is a conversation anyway, when you're on your instrument or when you're not, it's all about conversing, and you can't converse unless you listen.
I think for me, that's the universal language, right? Whatever it is we're playing, whether it's Western tones or Carnatic or anything, it still is recognizable as a very human way of saying something to other people, maybe one other person or a bunch of other people. So I that's the thing that really drives me with music is
Totally.
we're all talking the same language here.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I just watched a little clip from Hans Zimmer the other day, and he was talking about the magic of this. And he goes, "Music is magic. You get to do this. We get to do this. We get to play music. We get to communicate this way. We are the luckiest people, because music is magic, and it's universal. Right. It's been around forever, and human beings, we converse this way, or we communicate regardless of what language we speak. I could go to I could go to any country and meet musicians that don't speak my language, and we can communicate. It's so amazing to me. Hans was talking about that, and I'm a huge Hans Zimmer fan, and it was really cool to hear him voice that. Also, Rick Rubin has a great book out.
Yes, he does.
And I read that book, and it's just interesting his approach to being the amazing producer that he is, where he doesn't even play an instrument, he doesn't even engineer, but he listens.
He listens, right?
And
not just to what's going on, not just the conversation, but he listens to I think that guy listens to the ether.
Yeah,
he's got it going on in a very deep way. I don't think that's unique. I think a lot of creatives bring that, but he's found a way to say it as well in the book.
He is a deep cat, man. I mean, for somebody who doesn't play an instrument and doesn't even engineer the board, to be able to get those credits and produce all those people, what is he doing? Yeah. He's listening, and he's bringing out the best in every one of these people. He's figured it out like that, and he's produced all these amazing recordings.
That's right.
I've never met him, but man, I would like to meet that guy.
He is something else. The work he did with Cash on the American series was just like, whew,
so good.
Yeah.
So good. I know.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about so your own albums, Rich, and the tracks that we're going to play. So I think we're going to do 3 for the show, one from each of your 3 records. So tell me about the albums and where they came from. We talked a little bit about this early on, but let's start at the beginning and your debut and what we're going to hear from that.
Well, that was a big experimentation, the first record, because it was the first time doing it, and I was just kind of throwing shit at the wall. So, one song, for example, my mom had died at that point, right before that, when I started working on that record. Well, that record came out in 2018. My mom died in 2011, so I actually started working on that record way back in 2011. There's a song called Solitude on that album that's very somber, and that was reflecting of what I was feeling. It was a piano melody. And then there was a bunch of stuff on that record that was more influenced by percussion, like the first album, or the first song on it, called Travels with Mecca. I wrote some of that on an airplane on GarageBand, kind of coming up with loops to play along with. And then played some Doombeck to it and kind of built percussion riffs. So it was kind of like that song, like I was saying, it's kind of like all over the place when it comes to the genre. I wasn't thinking very, very smart when it comes to marketing it. I was just saying, I'm just going to do what I want to do. Who cares? I wanted to just come out with stuff that came to me at that time. And there's a couple other songs on that record that just started out with piano melodies that I built upon. So it was more of a improv experimentation that turned into that record.
And do you think you're more savvy now with marketing and sort of discoverability, if we can call it that?
A little, but, again, it's so tricky to try to market in this climate now, you're doing it all our own and stuff. Yeah. I have no illusions about, where I am as a musician and composer. I write this stuff for myself. If people like it, great, and it's been received, but, I've never really gotten rich on it. I've been able to recoup all the plastic on all 3 of them, which is good. The production side of it. But, I write for myself, and if people dig it, they dig it. And people have liked it. So that's nice. But it's, I don't really, I spend a little time on each record marketing it and trying to do my thing, getting people to know what it is. But again, as I've progressed in doing it, the whole CD sales thing has gone down more. I mean, when I first came on with the first album, I sold a lot more of the first album CDs. Now the third album, I haven't been able to move much of anything because it's gotten worse in that regard. A lot more and more people are you're just using streaming now, so.
That record, your debut, is called Travels. I think we're going to play Amazonia's, right? But that, your mother passed in 2011 and the album came out in 2018. That's a long gestation. What were you sort of thinking about yourself as a album producer, as an album creator during those years?
I was experimenting with sounds and concepts and just atmosphere, and what kind of sound I liked and build off of it. For example, that song Amazonia, I came up with a keyboard sound that I thought was just really inspiring, and I started writing around that, and then I built the percussion around it. And as soon as I got the sound of the keyboard sample that I was using, it kind of steered me in a direction of something tribal, kind of like something that when you hear it, you'll see what I mean. But that was the only song on that album that actually got a little bit of airplay in San Francisco on a jazz station. But just just a teeny little bit. But yeah, it's just, again, a lot of times it's a sound or an atmosphere that I'll start with, and it'll inspire me to move in a direction.
What's your recording sound, Rich? Are you still using GarageBand, or do you have a different kind of
I use Logic, and then a bunch of different sound libraries. A lot of the Spectrasonic stuff I use for different instruments, and a lot of the Contact instruments, and also Native Access, all their stuff. So yeah, so it's a combination of synthetic stuff and my acoustic instruments. I also use a lot of the Spitfire audio stuff. So I built my library to basically complement all of the different instruments that I have from around the world in my studio.
Second album, I think, is called Dialogues. Is that right?
Yeah.
And we're going to play Flattening the Curve. I think this is a great tune. Tell me about this one.
Flattening the Curve, again, from the COVID terminologies, and that one just was something I wanted to do. I wanted to do a duo with the bass player on that song. His name is Mark Harris. He's the bass player for Venice. And he and I still play together a lot every week. He's a really great bass player. And I wanted to do a duo with him, more of that progressive jazz rock stuff. So that's where that came from. And that one actually started with that drum riff that I play in the beginning of the song. And then I added the Fender Rhodes piano part, and then came up with a little synth melody, and then Mark played a bass part that I kind of sang to him a little bit of what I was hearing, and then he took it and ran with it. Then I wanted to end the song with his bass solo, which is what we took it out with. It was great. Did that in one take.
No kidding.
It's great. He did that bass solo in one take. Yeah, it's great.
I love this idea of I hummed a few bars and he ran with it. That's
Yeah.
so evocative, right?
It was really fun.
Feel you guys in the studio doing that, putting that together.
It was fun. I'm thinking even with the beginning of the solo, like the 3 or 4 lines or notes in the beginning of the solo, I sang those lines. That I go, Mark, start with the do, and then he just went with it. After that, I heard that part, and then he took it. You know,
Nice.
Really cool. It's really nice
That's
that I have a little duel with him.
And the third album, the most recent one, it's A Dream I Had, and
that was very inspired by movie soundtrack music. So that one was inspired by just different soundtracks that I listened to. And I wanted something very uplifting, very positive, something you would hear at the end of a movie that makes you feel good. And the whole idea of the way it was kind of like harking back to, maybe an easier time, after everything we've gone through in the past 10 years, there was before the last 10 years and now and what we've been experiencing, even before the pandemic. In the past 10 years, things have just turned into like this kind of a cloud. But before it was a time when, when I was in my 40s and I was working with Glenn and Joe, there was an amazing time in my life. So I was kind of thinking back on the way it was, I was like, wow, that was a pretty amazing time, that kind of idea.
But those 10 years have been, really the rise of streaming, the rise of social media, the rise of sort of the internet as the replacement for everything that we used to know, right?
Yeah. And
from phone calls to records.
And the rise of miscommunication and the rise of isolation and the rise of fear and a lot of things, that we're dealing with now. Technology can be a great thing, and it can also just like, wow, where is everybody?
So we're at the hour. We're a little bit over, Rich. I want to respect your time, but tell me, if you don't mind, what's your, the premise of this show is that music is the sum of all wisdom. I think essentially for me, that is, we speak the universal language when we're communicating through music. But it's more than that. It's more than just the pithy, I've gone to the oracle and I've learned something from the oracle. I think wisdom is much more embodied. It's much more experiential. It's much more in the relationship that we have with each other as we communicate through music. So with that sort of in mind, what words of wisdom do you have to pass on to folks who are listening?
I think there's in a lot of respects, as a human being, we all have some sort of music in us, that's inside of us, whether you can carry a tune or not. Since we were young, we were hearing melody in our head, or we're hearing songs, or something that we heard when we were younger gives us an emotional feeling or something. But I think it's kind of inside of all of us, and it is a communication that is kind of a natural form of communication. Even if somebody's just walking down the street and whistling. If you think about it, if you're walking down the street, if you're taking a walk, right?
Right.
And you're talking to somebody and you're walking at the same time and you're breathing at the same time, you're doing 3 different types of rhythms without even knowing you're doing it.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like you're walking in one rhythm, your heart's beating in one rhythm, you're talking to somebody. We're multi-rhythmic beings naturally. I think musicians have just tapped into that deeper, but I think everybody benefits from music, whether they think about it or not, and I think it's unfortunate that there's been these huge corporations that have tapped into, let's make this real convenient for everybody. So they only have to pay a little bit per month and they can hear anything they want to. Number one, that has helped people listen to music more. Yes. But it's taken away that special thing about supporting the people that create the music, unfortunately. Right. But I think that, it is a form of communication that's a natural thing for a human being. So yeah, I don't know. I think maybe just open your ears up and
I think the corporate convenience thing has also backgrounded music way too much. It's everywhere. It's a little bit unfair of me to say that's too recent, because we've been experiencing that since Muzak, right? Basically.
sure.
But it sure seems to have gotten to a different sort of scale of we just don't pay attention anymore. The open your ears, for me, that's the wisdom that we really need to hear today.
Yeah. I mean, if you see somebody's body language when they're in a live performance of some kind or whatever, it can tell you a lot, and how they're moving, or how they're experiencing seeing something live, I think people should see more live music, more live theater.
100% agree with that.
More live theater, more live music. Get out and see more live performing,
And support the artists.
And support the artist, and just see, like Hans had said, see the magic of this, and experience it, feel it,
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rich.
Yeah.
Good words. Thanks very much. I really appreciate you being here today. This has been for me, a fun conversation. I think, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be here.
I'll be in touch, Rich. Thanks very much.
Scott, thank you very much, man. Really nice to meet you and talk to you.
It's great. I love meeting you. It's so much fun to have this conversation. I hope we get a chance to talk again this way.
Me too. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Sum of All Wisdom. If today's conversation resonated with you, I hope you'll take one more thing with you. Not just a new story, but a new way of listening. Because every artist leaves traces, not only in the work they create, but in the people they influence, the traditions they carry forward, and the lives they change, including yours, as part of our growing audience. That's what we're exploring here, and if you'd like to continue the conversation, you'll find full show notes, essays, transcripts, and more at thesumofallwisdom.com. Wherever you listen, liking, subscribing, and sharing the show helps more people discover these conversations. Until next time, stay curious, keep listening.